entrepreneurs, coaches, and influencers together to discuss cutting-edge topics for the world of relationships, culture, business, and spirituality. Here's your host, Max Anjanetta Jones.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Carol's Courage to Confidence segment of the Intuitive Entrepreneur Show. You know where we say, if you have a little bit of courage, and I know you do, and you hire a good coach like me or Dr. Juanita, you can very quickly go from where you are to where you really want to be. Now, those of you who follow me know I'm your weather girl. So when you chime in today, put it in the chat. Let me know where you're chiming in from and let me know what the weather's like where you are. Now, if you're like me down here in hot as you know what, South Florida, you're probably sweating. But at least we're not having tornadoes down here. So let me know in the chat how you're doing. Dr. Juanita Gaynor, welcome today. First thing I want you to do is tell everybody where you're chiming in from and what the weather's like where you are, and then we're going to jump into our fun conversation today.
I am in East Orange, New Jersey, and the weather is about 75 here, but it feels like hell.
It does?
The humidity. With the humidity, and we're close to the water.
Well, so am I in South Florida, but it's 95 here and 85% humidity.
Yeah, so we're both suffering the same.
Oh, hello, Jody. Thank you for saying hello. Let us know what the weather's like where you are. So glad you're here with us today. We're going to have a great conversation with Dr. Juanita. So the first thing I want to talk about with Dr. Juanita, I got lots I can talk to you about. What was your first impetus to start your first company? I know you've had 5 companies that you've started, but what really got you on the road, if you will, to entrepreneurship?
I am a survivor of childhood abuse. And so it was more so a trauma response because I didn't like being told what to do or what to do with my time. And because I couldn't control it in my younger years, I chose a business that I could control the outcome. Mm-hmm. And that's where the event management company came into play. And I was able to help people see their goals, achieve their goals, and control how that movement worked. So that first business was really what I call a trauma. It was a trauma business. It was very successful, but it was a trauma business.
Okay.
Yes.
But then you branched off into 4 other ones. Tell me a little bit about that.
So the accounting firm was something that came natural. I've been working with numbers since I was a kid. As a kid, I used to be my aunt's bookkeeper managing her properties. So numbers always came natural. So as I went back to school to do more, I was doing people's taxes. It made sense. And also it kind of went hand in hand with the events. I was working with clients. They didn't understand the budgets, how to work them. So they both businesses kind of worked hand in hand. And so they're still standing. Restored to Life came about as I began my healing journey from trauma. Mm-hmm. And that is a nonprofit that I'm working on that helps those children or young and adults whose parents didn't survive the drug abuse. And there was nowhere for them to go. We have so many resources for, parents, for the children of parents who actually get clean, who live great lives. But there was nothing for that child but we didn't live with the mother. We was taken. There was no resources after she died. It was like, there was no reunification plan of how our lives would go. It was like, okay, she's lost and she's died. It was all well to go. And we were kind of left shuffling in the world. And so it was a way to help people have a safe space to begin to talk before going into full counseling, because some people just don't know that they need the help. And then
that in between, that's almost the toughest place to be, right?
It is.
It's not just getting started, but then, like you said, going into the more intensive counseling, but that in between, that limbo,
yes.
It's hard to keep somebody moving forward.
Yes. And because we get people that don't listen or don't want to hear, because that in-between stage is very hard. So I found I never had a safe space. So it wasn't until I was spiraling before I actually got real help. And my goal is that I don't want you to spiral. I want you, if you sit in 5 meetings and never say anything. And finally, one day you pulled me aside. I was like, you know what? After listening to everyone, I really need to talk to somebody. That's the goal of the whole thing, is to get you to move to when you get the true and real counseling, and then afterwards help you navigate through, meaning maybe helping you start businesses, go back to school, to see what that looks like outside of trauma.
So you're like a prime example of our mess becomes our message, right?
Yes.
So true for most of us, even though we don't like the going through. The going through is the tough part.
Yes.
And I just want to comment on Jody real quick here. Jody's going to make us both jealous. She says it's only 69 degrees here in the United Kingdom, and I'd love a little more heat.
We can trade.
Come on. Yeah, exactly. Let's send you some of this stuff.
Right.
So one of the things I also read about you is that you've written several books. I've been co-author of a book, and my next book coming, I had a lady yesterday, I mentioned this in a networking event. She goes, when is the book coming out? I'm just like, oh, pressure. I said, my friend Jeff wants a copy of it for his birthday in September, because I've been talking about it and not taking action on it. But the name of my next book is going to be called You Can't Read the Label When You're Inside a Jar. And we're all in a jar. Yes. We're all in a jar. So as you see on my moniker, I'm known as the Queen of Reframe, because I teach and train on how to ask empowering questions to get the answers that you really want. And so the answers that most people really want are where? Right outside their jar. Yep. They just don't know how to ask the questions to bring them in. So I was looking at all of your book titles, and the one I really would like you to talk about first is I Am Who God Says I Am. Tell me about that book.
Okay. That book is a compilation. My good friend, Minister Keisha L. Peterson, she was the compiler for that book and the brainchild behind it. And what it was about 15, 20 women getting together and saying, I am something. And for me, it was, I am healed. Okay. That little child that had been in that preteen and that up to young adult had been healed, had been accepted, that this was a foundational path, that this was the catapult to the next level. It was finally me vocalizing that I'm healed, that I'm okay. Basically telling my grandma, you don't have to pray for me wherever you at anymore. I got this now. I can say my own prayers now. And just really going into some detail that even though I've done some public speaking on my traumas as a child, it was the first time it was really ever put in the paper in great detail. And so there was a bunch of just amazing other women in that book who were saying just different things, their I am statements. And what it did was, I didn't realize my story. I thought everyone else's was great. They all wasn't moved by mine, because it was like, you're not in somebody's mental institution. You're not out here crazy. You're not out here. You're really, doing the things and that you speak about. And I began to realize and understand that I really need to do this more, because so many people are in situations that they'll never get out of, that were way not even as bad as mine or even worse, but they only see the situation. Right. So that was the catapult for me to finish my book. Look, that's been in the works for years. And I used to beat myself up about it, but God was telling me that I had to wait. There was a healing part that he needed me to go through, because I was stuck on a section. The book is 90% finished, but it was this one part that I just couldn't get past. And it was because I had not been healed from that part. I was still holding on to aspects of that trauma. And so I couldn't write about it because I hadn't gotten past it. Even though it was 20 years ago, I was still stuck there. So we're there. It's come out. That's called Beyond Broken, Beyond Healed. Okay. Moving past your pain.
When you say we're there, has it been published?
No, it's right now it is with my copy editor, and she's reviewing the final things and stuff like that. So by the middle of next month, that should be ready to go. So
if you were going to tell somebody who maybe was not familiar with a lot of what the Bible says, what would you say are the top 3 or 4 things that the Bible says I am, when God says you are?
That I am loved, I am worthy, and I am cherished.
Mm.
And for those are the things that most people who suffer any type of trauma don't feel. They feel void of those things. And for me, the Bible tells you in just about everything that I've ever read, those three things.
Mm. The ones that usually come up for me first when someone says, "Who are you?" I say, "I'm a child of the Most High God." That's the one
Ooh.
that comes up for me first every time. As a matter of fact, my friend Jeff that we talked about earlier, he was asking me some questions the other day. I don't know, something. And he said, "That's what I always hear you say. I'm a child of the Most High God," right? That's my first thing. And then the second thing that comes up for me is I'm the head and not the tail.
Ooh.
Because oftentimes, right, we think we're the tail being wagged on the dog,
Yes.
if you will, right? And
Yes.
things are just always happening to us, and we don't realize that we have more opportunity. And one of the things I talk on when I speak on leadership, right, is the 4 levels of responsibility. And when we're operating at level 1, which is what? I am 100% responsible for everything.
Yeah.
When you and I are having that same kind of conversation, we have a completely different conversation than someone who's operating at level 4 that's like, it's the job, it's the boss, it's the weather, it's the COVID, it's always something else.
Yes.
And it's one of the things I help my clients see is every time they do that, they give up their power, right? And understanding that there's power in choice. So for me, you're a great example of that very statement. There's power in choice. You chose.
Yes.
Right? You could have chosen a completely different path.
Yeah.
You remind me a little bit of the study that was done on 2 brothers. They were twin brothers raised in the same household.
Wow.
Same parents. One goes on to make, mega money on Wall Street. He's a big dude, humble dude, nice guy, but big dude. And the other one delves into drugs, becomes a complete drug addict. And so he was being interviewed on a television show. And the interviewer asked him, and he said, "What's the difference? How did y'all go on such different paths?" This guy just calmly looked at him and said, "I chose.
Wow.
I chose."
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
And we don't always recognize how much power there is in choice.
Yes.
And I tell my clients, and it sounds like you're right on that same path, is it only when we own that we're choosing can we then make a different choice?
Yes.
Look at what you're doing for those. I don't know if it's men and women, but the people you were talking about that come to listen to you, maybe after 5 sessions, are like, because now they're empowered.
Yes.
They're choosing to come to you. They're choosing to say, "I'm ready for help."
Yes.
That's
And that's
awesome.
always the benefit. I get so much joy out of just being able to listen to someone or help them navigate from one, avenue to the next, because someone didn't do it, wasn't able to do it for me. Not that they didn't, they were not able to. And I think so many times we say somebody didn't do something for us. And it's not that they didn't do it. They were not able to do it in the way in which you needed it to be done. So instead of interfering, instead of taking you down a path you didn't deserve to be down, they did not engage. Didn't mean they didn't care. It didn't mean they wasn't looking out. They could not provide you what you needed, how you needed it.
So it's not a capability, it's a capacity issue.
Yes.
They didn't have the capacity.
Yes.
Ooh, fascinating. I love, how did that come out? Capability and capacity. I like that.
Perfect. Yeah, because I think a lot of times we think, oh, you have the degrees or you have this. I have people, so I tell no sometimes because I'm like, I just don't have, and I say it, I do not have the capacity to deal with this.
Right. Yep. But to me, that's the honorable and responsible thing to say, as opposed to pretending to ride along and then somebody gets resentful and all that mess. Speaking of books, by the way, we don't have to talk about this, but my first book was a compilation too, and it was about women who boss up. So that's very interesting that both of our first books were compilations. Mine was with 15 other women. Really cool. Like you said, some awesome stories. I mean, they think my story's awesome. I'm like, wait a minute, you got to go talk to Tracy.
Right.
Tracy was burned over like, what was it? 79% of her body at the age of 10.
Wow.
and to see how far she's come. And, you can imagine all the therapy work to get your muscles to move again and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And then what she's turned that into to help other people is just, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So earlier, before we hopped on, I asked if you knew about this author, Iyanla Vanzant.
Yes.
Have you ever read this book until today?
No, I have not read that book. I actually do have it in my library, though.
I'm going to encourage you to get it out, and I'll tell you why. This is a daily book. This is not a book that you're just going to, I'm going to read 10 pages. Each month has a theme.
Okay.
And then each day starts with that theme and gives you a lesson. So for example, I'll just tell you what today's, we don't have to read the whole thing, but today's the 19th, correct?
Yes.
So July is about understanding. That's what the month of July is about. So she says, I will gain more understanding when I realize ... That's how every day starts this month.
Right.
And this one is, I have been a captive audience for the reruns of my life. Right. And I'm going to read you the first just couple of sentences. Most of us have a story, because I think this fits in with some of the things that you and I've both overcome. Most of us have a story about why we haven't gotten around to doing what we say we want to do. We can tell the story with exacting precision at any moment for anyone who will listen to the tragic details of our failures, disappointments, betrayals, which have led us to our seeming, and she puts the word seeming in italics, inability to be the person that we know we can be, want to be, need to be, but can't be because of how we feel about ourselves in response to the events of the story we've been telling ourselves, including the ending statement about what we like and don't like, have and don't have, using both as explanations for why we're not where we say we want to be. Now, is that the longest sentence in history?
It is.
Right? It's longest, but it's kind of interesting because she comes down, because the point she's trying to make is to do things in simple sentences and not make everything one big long run-on sentence of reruns. It was interesting how she did that.
Yeah.
But why did I bring this up? I have Carol's Courage to Confidence show on my page every Monday at 12 noon. And I was my tribe loves me and I tie in business wisdom and teaching with this. And I usually tie in another book. Sometimes it's John Wooden on leadership. Sometimes it's John Maxwell's leadership. But anyway, I was telling somebody a story the other day. Like, one of my challenges as an adult has been to trust my own intuition, to even, number one, to believe that I have one, and then to listen to it, and then to really trust it. So last summer at this time, I had been through a very intensive leadership program, gained a new friend out of Louisiana, and she was pretty much screaming at me on the phone one day, telling me how undisciplined I was, that I didn't plan my Monday show in advance so that I could do better, more concise promotion and get a broader range of people there. And I listened to her. I'm like, yeah, I just listened. So what I was explaining to someone, and this was just 2 days ago, I showed up with this and another book that I've never picked up and brought to my show. But when I stood there before my books about 10 minutes before the show, this is my typical routine. So, that's the book.
Right.
I thumbed through, that's what we're going to talk about. And I put it down. And so for me, that is one area where I completely trust my intuition. I had somebody show up live to the show, engage in dialogue and conversation, and say, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed to hear today.
Right.
Right. So talk about how, if you can, when I talk about hearing from my intuition, I think sometimes I'm also challenged in hearing from God. It's not that I don't ask. It's not that I don't pray. Maybe I'm not a good listener. Or how can I, seriously, I'm being honest here.
I get it.
How can I tap into that? Or how do you help people tap into their higher power, if you will?
So what, the same challenges that you were having, I have, and some days I'd still have them. And mine's is more so acting on that initial intuition. God for me is very distinct. He talks to me like just anyone else. And, because I tell people, God talks to everyone differently, works with, because we're unique. He doesn't treat us the same. And so for the longest, he kept telling me, he says, you have to get back into your success mindset coaching. You have to get back into you discussing with women, especially women entrepreneurs, how to overcome the fear, the failure of success, how to undo, self-sabotage and creating to that. And so one day he distinctly showed me, he was like, you're sabotaging yourself every single day.
Mm.
And then what I had to do was understand that there was a trauma around success and money.
Mm.
And I had to look back at my preteen years and realize that every time that I had money, there was a trauma in which it was taken from me, or there was some type of trauma that it was snatched. So I didn't feel that I needed to gain it. So if I didn't have it, you couldn't come after it.
Mm.
And then as a preteen, I modeled, I did design, I was very successful. But the reason why I wasn't pushing success, I remember a time in school, I think it was like fourth grade, where my teacher took my entire sketchbook, ripped it up,
Mm.
and threw it in the trash. So therefore, I always limit myself in how successful or how big I've become. And once I understood where those triggers were, and to say I'm not in the fourth grade anymore, or I'm not 15 anymore, and somebody, is taking my money or misusing me or abusing me, and it's just like, okay, now that I understand what that trauma is, let's rebuild the foundation of what success is supposed to look like. Let's rebuild the foundation that I am worthy enough to charge the fee for my services or for my products. And once I begun to do that, and able to solve the process out, that is what I do with entrepreneurs. Because so many was coming to me and was like, I'm like, you're charging like 5,000 less than what you should be charging. No wonder you're not breaking even. Or you were at the height. What happened? Why did you stop? Now my thing is, what happened the first time you hit success? And I want you to think about it. And then when you really think about it, I'm like, oh wow, my mom said I wasn't going to do anything, or my dad said I wasn't going to, or it was my cousin because she was like my sister, or he was like my brother. I wanted them to love me, so I didn't want to outshine them, so I just didn't.
Oh
So
my
it's
goodness.
really helping them to understand where that initial trauma had happened, and then realizing for some, their businesses were formed in trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And once they've healed, it wasn't something that they had an interest in. So what I'm also doing is we're getting to that trauma point, but then if they don't want that business anymore, I'm helping them to go to the next phase of rebranding, because now they've identified who they are. And they
Mm-hmm.
realize that I was this person in this trauma and it was great to have it, but that's not what I really wanted to do. I was doing this as an escape.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think you and I get to collaborate. We could do something together.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'll have you live on my page in front of my tribe, and we'll do a Facebook Live swap
Absolutely.
and pour into each other's audiences. One of the things you just made me think of, you're familiar. I'm confident. I'm going to go out on a limb here that you're familiar with Lisa Nichols,
Yes, I'm connected
right?
with her on Facebook. I love her.
Right?
Love her.
Have you ever met her in person?
No, I have not. I've been following her for years. I just love her spirit, her content. I just love her. So
Well,
yes,
you
I'm
know her
familiar.
story about it was August of one year, and she had made $950,000, and she told her team she was taking the rest of the year off, and so she did. And the next year rolls around. No, I'm sorry, that was October. It was October. She's going to take the rest of the year off. The following year rolls around, and she made $950,000 by August, and she tells her team, "I'm taking the rest of the year off." And someone called her out, like, "What the hell are you doing?" And she got to do the work that was important for her to do. And she, because of how she had been raised and what she had heard and what she had been told, Black women in her mind were not supposed to make $1 million. So she kept stopping just short
Yeah.
of $1 million until someone helped her become aware. And I bring that up because I think the world, and yes, there's some bad coaches, there's bad doctors, there's bad lawyers, there's one in every bunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's so important to have a good coach. I mean, you look at Oprah at one point had 4. And if anybody watches this show, they've heard me mention it because a reporter asked her one day, why you have 4 coaches? Right? Like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, well, nobody's an expert in all 4 quadrants of my life. And I want to know that I'm living all the areas of my life at the highest level. And it's funny how we associate coaching is okay if you're an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that I gave a talk for a Chamber of Commerce back in 2018, I think. It was before COVID.
Yeah.
And I made a comment that, you know, even Warren Buffett has a coach. There was a young man sitting back in the audience, and he grumbles under his breath something about, yeah, that's what he needs, more money, right? So I said, did I say he had a financial coach? Look at the assumption this young man made. And I said, would you be open to play with me? And he said, yes. So I literally came off stage and went out in the audience and started asking him some questions. It's very interesting. His challenges with money, just like you were talking about yours. I have mine. We all have them, but we make these assumptions, and some people just don't want to reach out for help for whatever reason.
And some of them just can't. There's some people they've gotten comfort. It's what I used to say before my divorce. It was okay for me to stay with the crazy I know than to go into the crazy I don't know. So when you talk about trauma, abusive situations, many people, and it's not that they're bad, but it's comfortable enough for them to stay with the crazy they do know. They know what this crazy looks like. They know what this crazy is going to turn into, good or bad. They know.
I'm going to challenge you because I'm not convinced it's comfortable. I'm convinced it's familiar, and you will stay in something that's familiar even when it's uncomfortable. Right? Until it gets to that breaking point.
But some people, it never gets to that breaking point.
I know.
And that's unfortunate. But I even say that they even have a purpose because they're an example or model to somebody else what they don't want to do.
Yep.
I feel in life where we have every relationship, good, bad, or indifferent, is a lesson or a blessing or a combination of both. It's a lesson of what you don't want to do or what you do want to do. And a lot of times it can bless you to the next level. So, I stopped saying I had bad relationships. I've had awful relationships. I would say that relationship taught me what I didn't want in a mate, taught me what I didn't want in a friend. It blessed me to know that I deserved better in my partnerships and in my friendships and in my work relationships.
And you took all that you learned and you're now pouring into your clients, right?
Yes.
I was in 8 years ago, I was in a very toxic relationship. And I remember the day. I can't tell you how many times I had said, stop disrespecting me. And then the day that it came in my jar, I had my awareness and I thought, oh, as long as there's no consequences to you disrespecting me other than me telling you to stop, it's me who's disrespecting me.
Yes.
That changed everything.
Yes.
Everything. Oh my gosh. We are almost out of time. Here's what I want you to do for me. I want you to tell us who your ideal client is. Tell us how people can find you. And then you and I are going to wrap up. You're going to leave, if you could give the audience one thought. Sure. And then I'll give the audience one thought and we'll wrap it up for today.
Absolutely. So my ideal client is that business owner who they've worked towards whatever, they got a great business, but they're not reaching that next level. You want more money, you deserve the success, but something is keeping you right where you are. That is my ideal client, because what I'm going to do is help you move beyond that and to even say, I may need a new business. I may need to rebrand. I may need to step back. But my goal is to help you break that cycle so that you can be wealthy and create generational wealth for yourself and your family. They can reach me at my website, JuanitaEGaynor.com. You can reach me on Instagram, Twitter, all of the social media channels with @JuanitaEGaynor. I like to keep things consistent and easy. So you can find me TikTok, YouTube, all of those as well. So if you feel that you are that ideal client, or you feel that you want to, talk some more, definitely let us know. Carol, if not, I can provide a link. I do have an ebook that I would definitely want to share with the group. And it is named, I'm pulling it up now. I just literally finished it like 2 days ago. I was drafting it up, and it's called Healing Through Self-Compassion, Cultivating Inner Strength After Trauma. And it was so many, it has, commentary, but it also has mindset, journal entries. It has exercises. It really deep dives to that so that we can, get to the bottom of that. So I'll provide you with that link for them to be able to get
you
that.
Can pop that in the private chat to me before you go, and you get real quick, 15 seconds. One last thought you're going to leave our audience with. One thought.
You deserve more than you think. You deserve more than you know. Do not limit yourself and the people around you to just the trauma that you first experienced.
Thank you so much for being, every time I see your last name Gaynor, I think Gloria Gaynor. I will survive.
Everybody does.
It's just taking me into another realm, a whole other thing. Thank you so much for Jody Michaels. Did you put a face in there, Jody? I can't tell what that symbol is. It didn't come through. Try it again. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Juanita. We're definitely going to connect again.
Yes.
This has been Carol's Courage to Confidence segment of the Intuitive Entrepreneur Show. Make sure you come back next week. I don't know who the guest is, but it's always somebody good. And if I'm going to leave you with one thought is that your job is to trust the process and take the next step, because I believe God only gave us a lamplight for our feet because our job is to trust in the process and take the next step. Until next week, blessings to each and every one of you. Go and bring joy not only into your life, but into someone else's. Take care.
The Intuitive Entrepreneur Show is hosted by Max and Janetta Jones and is brought to you by Life Coaching Today magazine, empowering your health, business, community, and life. This has been a production of True Awesome Life Productions, who asked, what does your true awesome life look like? Start that journey today at trueawesomelife.com. For more information on this or past episodes,